let's take a look at how to perform the multiplication of fractions. The key background skill that you need to do this is to be able to have recognition of a GCF. GCF is greatest common factor. What we mean by that is if you have a few given numbers, their greatest common factor is the largest number that you can divide the given numbers by evenly. Sometimes we call it a number that goes into another number. For instance, 4 goes into 12, so 4 is a factor of 12. Similarly, 5 does not go into 11, so 5 is not a factor of 11. So let's take a look now at where we're going to apply this recognition of a GCF with multiplication of fractions. In terms of steps, we have that step 1 is to convert all mixed fractions to improper fractions. The algorithm I'm going to show you does not work if you have mixed fractions. Step 2 is to identify if any numbers on the bow tie have a GCF other than 1. I'll talk about on the next slide what I mean by bow tie. It's a great little visual trick. Step 3 is to use the GCF as a divisor to simplify on the bow tie. So I'll model that when we get to the examples. And step 4 is multiply the remaining numerators and denominators. And what we usually mean by that is to go straight across. I'm very reticent to use a word that sounds at all like cross when we're talking about multiplication of fractions, because people think you cross multiply, which is completely not true. It is a completely different skill, that being cross multiplication. Okay, so let's continue on here. Okay, what do we mean by being on the bow tie? Well, the bow tie is just a general shape that everybody's familiar with. Looks like two triangles kind of together. It looks like a bow tie. And what we mean by numbers being on the bow tie would be if any of these connecting lines in the shape given here touch two numbers. So for instance, 1 and 2 are on the bow tie because they're vertical from each other. 2 and 3 are on the bow tie because they're diagonal from each other. 3 and 4 are on the bow tie, again similar to 1 and 2 because they're vertical in their placement of each other. 1 and 4, they're on the bow tie because they're diagonal. Now we'll change a color here. 1 and 3 are not on the bow tie. If you notice, they are horizontal from each other. Okay? And similarly, 2 and 4, not on the bow tie. There is no horizontal shape in the bow tie. So we need to recognize if any of these bow tie combinations have a GCF. So let's get right into an example here. Okay. Convert all mixed fractions to improper fractions. That's step 1. Well, if we see we do have a mixed fraction here. So we'll just convert that and do 7 times 1 plus 5. Part of my plus there, it was a little hard to write using the slate. So that's going to give us 12 sevenths times 3 sixteenths. Now, I chose lined paper for this slide because I'm trying to model that you should use 2 lines to write fractions, and you should use the line on your lined paper to use the bar for the fraction. Okay, so now let's take a look at identifying if any numbers on the bow tie have a GCF. So we'll take a look here. Draw the bow tie in if you can't visualize it. Well, 12 and 7, well, their GCF is 1. 7 and 3, their GCF is 1. 3 and 16, their GCF is 1. But 12 and 16, their GCF is going to be 4. Okay, Well, we're going to use the GCF as a divisor to simplify here. So we'll divide 12 by 4 and get 3. And then we're also going to divide the 16 by 4 and get 4. So it's real simple. You identify the GCF, and then you divide the numbers by the GCF. Now we're going to go, last thing here is multiply the remaining numerators and denominators. Well, the numerators are 3 times 3, which is 9, and 7 times 4, which is 28. And that is your final answer. The one thing that's important to realize here is we always want to simplify fractions when we have the opportunity to do so. Applying this Bowtie simplification algorithm before you multiply guarantees that your final answer won't have to be simplified any further. If your final answer does have to have the ability to be simplified further, it means that you could have Bowtied a little bit more before you multiplied across. This example only had one instance of being able to Bowtie, so let's take a look at a little harder example. Okay, so here we've got negative 1 and 11/14 times 2 1/3 times 1/15. So again, I'm going to take a look at converting my fractions here from mixed to improper. I have 2 of them. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 times 14 is 14 plus 11 is 25 over 14. And then I'm going to say that that is negative. Okay, you don't incorporate the negative 1 in the conversion. You just know that your final answer is going to be negative. That's very important. That's why I picked that as part of this example. Times 2 1/3 becomes 7/3 times 1/15. Okay? So now looking on the bow tie here, if you notice, here's a bow tie, and 25 and 14 don't have a GCF. 14 and 7 do though, however. So let me actually do a division by their GCF. So the GCF of 14 and 7 is 7. I'll divide both of them by 7. Okay, and continuing on, in that bow tie, you see that 25 and 3 don't have a GCF. Nothing else seems to there. Okay, so I could draw another bow tie here and see that it's no longer 7 but 1. 1 and 3 don't have a GCF. That's interesting. 3 and 1 don't. 1 and 15 don't. 3 and 15 do, but they don't have the bow tie. They're horizontal from each other. Now, the one reason I gave you in this example 3 fractions was to show you that you can actually put the bow tie anywhere you want. Because of the commutative property, you can change the order here. So if you notice, 25 and 2 don't have a GCF, but 25 and 15 do, so you actually can do a simplification there. So what is the simplification for that? Well, their GCF is 5, so you divide 15 by 5 and get 3, and 25 by 5 and get 5. So at this point now, we're ready to synthesize the answer because there are no more GCFs along the bow tie. Well, I know my answer is going to be negative because it's negative times positive, right? Now I'm going to do 5 times 1 is 5 over 2 times 3 is 6 times 3 is 18, making the final answer negative 5/18. You can always check on your calculator to guide yourself through understanding if you're getting these right or wrong. So again, the steps are convert all mixed fractions to improper fractions, identify any numbers on the bow tie that have a GCF other than 1. Really important that you can recognize the GCF. Use the GCF as the divisor to simplify on the bow tie, and multiply the remaining numerators and denominators straight across. Okay, and checking it on your calculator again is a good idea.